Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today's guest is a partner at Miller Thompson. He is graduate from Osgoode Hall Law School as well, and we go way back to our first year together there at Osgoode, and it's nice to always reconnect, just like with Richard there on Friday. So thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan Tong here for joining us.
No problem.
All right, so Jonathan, perhaps maybe you could start by telling us what got you into law in the first place, why law school, and tell us a little bit about your journey from Osgoode to being a partner today.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I wish I had some romantic story, or at least an exciting story as to why I chose law. I didn't grow up dreaming of going to law school or thinking that I was going to be a lawyer. It was always in the back of my mind, but I mean, like on and off, nothing too serious. And then like I just went to undergrad really because that was the path, and I chose history and poli-sci. And as I got to third year-ish, I think I started to think about, okay, like now I got to start thinking about my future. I'm supposed to be graduating soon. So what should I be doing? And I mean, again, it wasn't this huge passion for law. It was more just, I didn't think I was mature enough to want to go and enter the workforce and be a full-time worker and be a real life full-time adult. And so I kind of extended my school period by going to law school. And I figured that would be kind of a way to kind of give me a little bit more time. And so that's what I did. And as I started to go through law school and certainly when you start to practice, that's when I think the passion starts to come out, and you get to try new things and see what you like to do. The great thing about law school is that you don't have to just become a lawyer. And even if you do become a lawyer, there's so many different types of law. I mean, the stuff that I do compared to, for example, a litigator or an IP lawyer, for just to name a few examples, is completely different. I mean, it's just like almost different. It is a different industry, but it's almost like a different type of work in itself. And so I think there's a lot of flexibility in law school and in doing the law and in doing what you want with a law degree. It's completely different. I mean, JP, you know, our friends, just so everybody knows, JP's like as good of a friend as I have in law school from my law school days. But I mean, JP, you know, like just canvassing some of our friends from our class in section C at Osgoode, everybody's gone to a lot of different things and different paths, yourself included, myself included. And so I think that just shows the breadth of opportunities that law school kind of gives you. In terms of what I do right now, so I'm essentially a securities and corporate finance lawyer. I am one, and I do some M&A. I specialize in financings for public companies in particular. So, you know, prospectus offerings, IPOs, private placements. I do all of those. Some of the less exciting stuff, but certainly stuff that's important is, you know, good corporate governance, shareholders meetings, just general corporate governance and disclosure requirements, that type of stuff. So that's all in the security space. But mainly what I do is public offerings or private issuances for public companies. I also do general commercial law. I'm interested in particular with startups. I have a lot of startup companies in my own, I guess, book of business. In terms of the industries that I specialize in, I don't really specialize in any industries. I'll do anything from mining to biotech to tech. Personally, I'm interested in esports and like that type of work. But I mean, again, financings, they're all pretty similar. And so I do all types of financings for all different types of companies, REITs, anything you name it, I've worked on basically. And in terms of developing that passion, I mean, that's what articling and summaring in a law firm was for. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. When I was first interviewed at the firm that hired me as a student, it no longer exists, but Heenan Blakey, one of the jokes, and I still remember this, and I still tell this. I'm on the student committee at Miller Thompson, and so I sometimes I still tell this to people that I'm interviewing. But one of the jokes, and I vividly remember this, is that I asked the person interviewing me, when did you know that you wanted to be, this type of lawyer? I think it was tax at the time. The person that was interviewing me, and she kind of laughed, and her joke was, and this is a partner, she was like, I still don't know what I want to do in law. And I think that's the type of approach that I took. Some people go into articling and summaring, and they have a passion for something, and they know exactly what they want, and that's great, more power to you. But for me personally, that's just not something that I really knew. And so, I took the approach of, I'm going to go to a firm that does a lot of different things, and I'm going to try it. I'm going to use that summer. I'm going to use that articling opportunity to take advantage of that, and just try a lot of different things and see what I'm passionate about. Ultimately, I think a lot of it had to do with me personally and what I like, but also the people that you work with. I mean, I was drawn to a few mentors that just happened to be in securities at the time. And I mean, I like to think that's not the only reason why I practice securities to this day, but it certainly helps. I mean, the people and the mentors and the relationships that you make, that's kind of what's important. I think the second part of your question, sorry, I'm kind of meandering here, but the second part of your question was how I got from law school to Miller Thompson. So, so law school was funny. I don't want to try to, I might get in trouble here, but so law school is important, and you definitely have to work hard, as JP will let you know. And we certainly did, but I mean, I treated it like high school. My undergrad was not that fun, to be honest with you. I have lifelong friends, a select few, and JP knows them, that I kind of met through undergrad, but law school was really that high school type experience that I had, where like it was fun. Like, I know that sometimes they see Osgood's painted as some sort of commuter school, and in some ways it is. It's a large school, and some people do commute. But for the people like JP and myself who lived at Passy Crescent or whatever all the different options that you can live at Osgood, we really just had ourselves, and we were kind of stuck in that bubble, in that York University bubble. And, we didn't have cars or anything like that. To go downtown to get to the clubs, we would take that, what was it called? The Midnight Comet or whatever?
It was a 196 university bus. Or
3 a.m. in the morning coming back from downtown because we went to, this bar or this club or whatever. Anyways, this is not the reason why I'm supposed to be on this podcast, but yeah, like it was fun. Like we worked together, we grinded together. We were in the moot court at midnight, 1 a.m. grinding together. But also we were there to have fun, and we met a lot of lifelong friends, and so that was great. And so when that ended, I went over to Heenan Blakey, as I mentioned, and it was great. I have nothing but good things to say about Heenan Blakey. Some of you might have heard of them in the news. At the time, it was a big deal when they kind of closed the doors on Heenan Blakey. But again, I met a lot of important people in my life, a lot of mentors, a lot of people that came to my wedding, just like JP, not from Heenan Blakey, but lifelong friends and whatnot. And then when that kind of ended, I had a couple of other stops. And then I met somebody who's really important to me, a really strong mentor and a good friend of mine named Jeff Clark. And he basically was asked to go to another firm at the time. And he asked me if I wanted to come. And at that point, it was kind of a no-brainer, not because I didn't like where I was at, but because of that strong relationship I had with Jeff. And the fact that, quite frankly, I worked mostly with Jeff at that firm. And so so when we moved, it was at Miller Thompson. And since then, I've had an opportunity to become more entrenched, sort of like what I was at Heenan Blakey. I'm involved in a lot of different committees and parts of the firm, and that's kind of how I got here.
Perfect. I think for sure we'll talk about Osgood, and it's funny because actually I had to I was talking to undergrad students yesterday about sort of the same kind of thing, and I mentioned the exact same thing about the relationships in law school, as well as I think it was room 108, I believe, or 109 or something that we used to study until the wee hours there. And again, it's an important part. I mean, so don't think that it's not kind of relevant here. We can certainly revisit times at Osgoode because a lot of students obviously want to know what law school was like and a lot of those things. But let's talk about, so you mentioned Heenan Blakey and you mentioned coming over there afterwards to Miller Thompson. What was that like? I mean, it was unprecedented. I remember hearing about it. I think before there was a firm like Goodman and Carr. I think that was sort of the same kind of thing happened, but not nowhere to the level that Heenan Blakey's. And certainly I've talked to some of the people in the past who were sharing a little bit about that. So we don't need to rehash kind of what that was. But from your perspective, usually when you land your first year associate position after articling, that you feel like, hey, I'm set. I'm on this path to trajectories. Hopefully, I can make partner here, or at the very least develop so that I can go somewhere else and maybe make partner somewhere else. But did you feel that where you caught aback what was going on, and what were you thinking what your next step was going to be, or did you kind of have a feeling something was going to happen, or did it just kind of happen randomly one February morning and away everyone went?
Yeah, it completely took me off guard. I mean, obviously, when you're there, you do see that like there are changes. Every few weeks, there were people that were leaving, and as it got closer to the announcement, there started to be people leaving the firm that you wouldn't necessarily expect to leave the firm. People that had been there for a long time and in senior positions. That being said, even though you knew that the firm was struggling to retain certain people, I don't think anybody really expected, certainly not at a junior level like myself. I think I was in my third year. You didn't really expect a firm of that size to kind of, I guess, close its doors. And that's probably the reason why it got as much attention in the press as it did. I believe that like literally a few days before the announcement, one of my mentors and the head of the securities group at the time randomly walked into my office and closed the door and just said, just so you know, you might hear a few, like something crazy in the news in the next few days. No matter what, just remember that, we're sticking together as a group. And that was it. Like it was that vague. And that's kind of what happened. And even then, I think when the announcement was made, it wasn't still finalized. And so I think a lot of groups and lawyers were kind of pivoting, and then they start to negotiate with other law firms after the announcement. But even then, like nothing was set in stone. I was one of the lucky ones because, like I said, I didn't have to go out and on my own. I kind of just followed my group, which I was very close to. And so it was pretty surreal. Like it's what you would see in the movies, like, and seeing like the firm, it just completely stopped. Like it just started to change everything. It's pretty crazy. It's definitely something that I'll always remember.
It's funny because I think Suits is filmed in like the remnants of the office there, and where it was when it was still there, right?
Yeah.
So what can you share then? Again, maybe let's go back now and let's look at law school and then kind of come back to what you're doing now. Actually, I was seeing, I think on my Instagram that they're looking for an orientation week chair. I believe I still see, I think it's legal lit there, but I remember you used to be the orientation week chair. So maybe you can share a bit about what it's like to be involved in the school. And I know we were on Obiter and other things, but extracurriculars. I mean, you're saying, look, it's like high school, and in high school you would be in all these clubs and stuff too. But what impact did that have on you and your involvement in law school? And as well, what would it be like now if you were the orientation chair in 2021 where it's kind of remote? What do you think the challenges that students are facing, and what can you share kind of get through those times?
Yeah, I mean, my wife likes to joke that law school is probably the only time in my schooling career that I was considered cool, or I had cool friends like you. But but I don't know if I'm supposed to share that. But so yeah, I mean, with law school, I was always kind of I took it as an opportunity to kind of do the things that I didn't really get to do in my undergrad. And I'm not saying bad things about my undergrad, because again, it got me to where I was, and it's an important part of my life. And I made a lot of really good friends. But I mean, I went to a commuter school, and maybe it's because I didn't fully come out of my shell, but and it's on me. But like I didn't really take advantage necessarily of all the opportunities to get involved socially and extracurricular wise. I was kind of focused more on my studies. And then, so when Osgood kind of came along, it's funny because most people say, oh, like now it's time to get serious and to kind of like button up and study. I mean, certainly I did grind, as you know, in our late night study sessions. But I took it as an opportunity to go out and try a lot of different things and get a lot out of that. Like oftentimes you see it as, oh, I'll volunteer because I'm gonna get this on my resume and like that's the benefit. But for me, like I developed a lot of friendships and a lot of relationships and a lot of friends and skills. I got to practice a lot of different things by experiencing a lot of things that I still use today. I mean, there's no direct thing like, oh, if you want to be a good lawyer, you should be on this club, or if you want to be good at, drafting a contract, you should, do this. No, like I did things that like have nothing really to do specifically with law. Like I was captain of the intramural team that got crushed every week in basketball because nobody wanted it. Like nobody wanted to be the captain in a league where you're competing with non-lawyers and they're like dunking on you and stuff. But I liked it. I like playing basketball. And I'm not particularly good at it, but but I like playing basketball. And so like that was one thing that I did. I liked writing about sports. I wanted to write about Allen Iverson, as you know. And so I joined the school newspaper, the Oberta Dicta. I didn't write about the law. I think the running joke in our office, JP, it started mainly by you, was that I was the one who wrote about things that made notes that had nothing to do with law school. But like, I did it because I enjoy writing about sports. I enjoy reading about sports. And so like, these are the type of things that I did. Yeah, I put it on my resume. I don't think it helped me in getting a job at all. But for me, and this is what I tell people that are applying for jobs is that you should do what you're passionate about. Don't be, vice president of this club because it sounds cool. I mean, if you're passionate about the business law club or whatever, then go ahead, great, do it. But like, just to do something that you like, and that's the type of approach that I'm always taking with that. Like, it's fun, and then you meet new people. So like the orientation week, yeah, it's fun. And I got to like work with you and Sabrina and Karen and like all of these friends, Walker, Sahar. And so like, that was just fun because you're just a group of friends that were organizing something that needed to be done. But as you also know, like when else are you going to get the experience of like negotiating with like this venue? To get like so there is actual work involved sometimes as you go through the process, and like even like negotiating with people to get like jerseys, orientation jerseys, so that we could do this and like put like the logos and working with the law firms. So like you get all these experiences that like, yeah, it's not directly related to your practice of law, but I think that it makes you a more well-rounded individual, and it's still a valuable experience. And the important thing is that you're passionate about it because you're doing something that you like, that's fun, and you're working with people that you like, that are fun, and you're learning to work together. And like that's the most important thing. If there is some sort of like skill set that you learn, great, but like the experience and the passion that you put into it is great. I mean, that's more valuable than applying to be secretary of this club. That sounds really cool, but like really you don't do anything. You meet like maybe once a month and you take notes, and that's about it. Like I'm not hating on those clubs, but I'm just saying like do what you're passionate about, and I think you'll get a lot out of that. In terms of your other question about orientation, honestly, I feel for the person who has to do that because like it's tough. I think in all walks of life, not just in orientation, not just in law, everybody's kind of struggling with that. I think a lot of employers are struggling with that. I know that law firms are struggling with that across the street in terms of how to engage people, especially the students, especially the junior associates. If I'm just talking about law, but generally your employees. I know clients that are issuers are struggling with that with their own employees. It's tough. I mean, Zoom has certainly become the focus, and I think that's good because when we do finally go back to the normal way of life, I think now we have more opportunities and avenues to connect with people. Now Zoom is a legitimate option, and people that were at first forced to kind of learn that. And when I say Zoom, I mean also Microsoft Teams, all the different platforms and whatnot. And in some ways, I think it's going to help when we get back to normal, because it's just going to be another tool in the toolbox in terms of how to stay connected. But yeah, I mean, the best you can do is, I think, check in. I think you have to be innovative, even from a business development standpoint. I've had to pivot a little bit in terms of how I stay connected with clients. And it all depends on you, and it depends on your clients and what you like. There's different ways to do it. Instead of going out to a bar to drink with your clients, instead of taking them out to a Maple Leaf game or a Raptors game, um, you're going to have to find other ways that work in terms of staying connected.
Yeah, I've seen certain like virtual comedy shows or virtual like murder mysteries and like kind of things you could do there. That's a little outside the box, right? So a lot of different options. Um, Speaking of, I guess continuing on, I would be amiss. Now I know I haven't gone the last couple of years because I don't consider myself still a young professional, but you did follow up on sort of those work that you were doing in orientation, all the different clubs. And perhaps you can tell everyone listening about Breakfast of Champions. I think you're still somewhat involved, maybe not as much as you were once it started there, but what kind of led you to creating this? What's it about, and all the success you've accomplished with it, and with all the others involved over the last, I think, almost 10 years now?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's an initiative that's close to my heart. I started that when I was, I believe, in first year with a high school buddy of mine named Simon Leith, and his brother as well. And basically, um, going back to how much fun I had at Osgood, and how my wife said that I was finally cool at that time. Basically, what it was is I wanted an excuse to kind of stay connected with my friends, a lot of them from law school, and to do things that we used to do at law school. That's good, similar to like a week and all that stuff. And so I thought to myself, it's great that I'm learning all these new things as young professionals. When you're starting out as a young lawyer, or it could be other professions as well, you're so focused on your career and you're learning these things, which is great. It's going to help you. But what about like some of the other things, like maybe soft skills, or maybe learning to organize a little bit? Like these are the types of skills that I was talking about when we were at Osgood. It could be when you're in high school, it could be when you're in undergrad, but for me, it was mainly in law school. I wanted to kind of revisit that, and maybe I was kind of like feeling like I was missing something, and so I created this with Simon, and honestly, it was a back of the napkin idea. We were literally at a bar having drinks and dinner, and we were connecting. We hadn't connected for a while, since high school, really. And he was like, yeah, I think that I would like to do something like this. And I'm like, yeah. And so I worked at Sick Kids on a part-time basis as a SAR screener back in the day, and then my sister was actually a nurse there for over a decade. She was in the burn clinic. And so, I mean, Sick Kids was near and dear to my heart. I'd been treated at Sick Kids, nothing serious, but a couple of basketball injuries from somebody who's not very athletic. And so, like, basically, I thought, well, why not Sick Kids? Sick Kids is one of the, is one of the best leading hospitals in the world, and obviously it's a great cause. And so why not do that? And so that's the idea of what we kind of came about. Like I brought my friends together. Simon and his brother brought their friends together, and obviously the orientation committee has evolved over the past decade, but it's something that we've continued to strive for. And the idea is that it's focused on young professionals, and it's focused on bringing young professionals together to network, and also to break down barriers to access what we call champions, which are really just community leaders around Toronto. Since then, we've kind of grown beyond Toronto, but we have various champions. We've had people like Izzy Sharp, founder of Four Seasons. We've had people like Eric Lindros from the NHL. We've had Darcy Tucker from the Leafs. Various leaders in different fields, and then you basically have breakfast with them, and you can kind of just have a somewhat intimate breakfast with them of 10 people, and then you talk to them and you pick their brains on mentorship, and you also learn to network, and you build relationships that way. And so we've heard stories of various champions over the years continuing on after our event to mentor these individuals, and those are the type of stories that make us feel good about what we do. It's nice to raise funds for sick kids, but at the end of the day, it's so much more than just funds. What we're really trying to do is bring awareness to the cause, bring awareness to the hospital, and to kind of spread that mentorship for our young professionals.
I know you said it's more than just money, but I feel that there's a big number that you've raised over 10 years. You know it offhand, or?
You know what? I've kind of lost track over the years. It's over 1 million. I believe that this past year we had to kind of pivot to a virtual setting. So we had kind of a virtual, similar to this, a virtual discussion with a group of champions, and I think we raised a couple of 100,000 there. So I think we're well over 1 million at this point.
Perfect. That's great to share, and hopefully it allows by November. I mean, we know, who knows what the future is, but to return to kind of an in-person setting and continue your efforts there and the whole team. So we were talking about, you mentioned you were on the student committee, and I know this year was a little different with OCIs for those in law school, but perhaps you can share, even for my paralegal students listening as well, some advice that being on the other end of the interview in terms of whether it's preparation with resumes, cover letters, or just getting to the interview itself. You have that partner like, I don't know what I'm doing here in tax law still, but what can you share from those kinds of experiences with those who are going through looking for either internships or positions, whether as first year associates or legal assistants or clerks? Give us the inside scoop here.
Yeah, for sure. I still remember at Osgood, Chantel and Andre Bacchus, who actually ended up going to Heenan Blakey, so I know him quite well. But they were at our career services in our first year, and I remember sitting in and getting their advice on building my resume, cover letter, and I'm pretty sure Chantel even did practice interviews with me. So I understand how that can be nerve-wracking for sure. I've heard different stories. Like some of our friends, like Shane, for example, used to tell me that his strategy was he would go into an interview and he would say that no matter what, no matter how the conversation went, there would be 3 or 5 points that he would make sure that he would stress and that would come out in an interview. There's different ways to do it. I think you just have to kind of be sincere and true to yourself. I always tell people that for me, when I'm interviewing people, I really, and maybe this is different, it depends on the industry, but certainly for law, I'm not looking necessarily. I don't really care about grades or what's on your resume at that, by the time I'm interviewing you. I mean, certainly at the beginning when you're just reviewing transcripts and cover letters and just application packages, yeah, like that's all great, that's important. But usually by the time I'm sitting face to face with somebody during OCIs or in-firm interviews, or if I'm interviewing even for another position, such as a law clerk or an assistant, a legal assistant, for me, like all that goes out the window. Like I know that if you're in front of me, like we already know you're bright, you're smart, and you have all the abilities to do great in terms of what you do, at least within the 4 corners of the paper of your application. But like for me, all I care about at that point is I'm looking that I can have a conversation with you. It doesn't have to be the most amazing conversation, but like, a good, solid, easy conversation where like there's no like awkward pauses or like we're both kind of just like clawing to like do something, or we're just like looking at our watch and like waiting. I'm looking for some sort of engagement and easy conversation. And like that's it, because like at the end of the day, I can interview all I want. Like I know you're smart enough, I know you can do the work, but like I'm not gonna know by interviewing you, whether it be 15 minutes or an hour, what you're actually going to be like 6 months from now or a year from now when you're comfortable and whatnot. I'm not going to know what you're going to be like when I'm asking you to grind and it's like I don't know, midnight, and I'm asking a student to help me with something, or an associate to help me with something, and then we're kind of like working hand in hand. It's tough. So like I'm just looking at that point to have a normal conversation and being like, can I, do I see this person fitting in at the firm in terms of like the culture and whatnot? In terms of specifically what I look for in a legal assistant is attitude is the most important thing. Like just if you're just happy, it's just so much easier for everybody. I'm not saying for you to lie and be like the happiest person in the world every day. Like people have bad days, I get it, but good attitude is really important. Willingness to work hard within reason, nothing crazy, but you're a hard, solid worker. Um, Being proactive is great. Most of my legal assistants will tell you throughout my entire career, they'd probably joke that I don't need help from a legal perspective, but I need somebody to kind of like help with my life and manage my life more than anything. And that's probably true. Like, honestly, like, there are specific legal things that are important to know, and that those are the X's and O's that you'll learn in school and whatnot. But the most important thing for me is like I want somebody that is gonna like that's thinking ahead, because like we have all these deadlines and it's gonna get stressful. Like that's for sure. Like there are gonna be times when you're gonna see the lawyer that you're working for that's in a stressful position. The best you can do is think to yourself, how can I help? And even if it's being proactive and I don't know, submitting dockets or submitting invoices ahead of time. If you see that, you haven't received invoices or expenses from a lawyer in a while, if they haven't billed in a while, billed a client in a while, to kind of follow up, be proactive, show initiative. And even if that only saves them, I don't know, like 5 minutes in a day, that can add up over weeks, months, and years. And so like that's what I'm looking for. Somebody who's eager and proactive and willing to kind of like help and like is assessing the situation and being like, how can I help this person? I think unfortunately, and this is on the lawyers, and I'm at fault as much as anybody else for this, but a lot of the times I think the hardest thing about being a law clerk or a legal assistant is that there can be a lot of really rough times where all of a sudden, with no notice, it's like, I got to do this 100 miles per hour. And it's really stressful. And then there's a lot of downtimes and then like nothing really happens. And I think that's a tough thing to do. And I think that it's important for lawyers to remember. And I think it's important for legal assistants in particular, but also law clerks to be proactive and don't be afraid to ask and remind the lawyers like, hey, keep me posted on this, keep me posted on that, so that you can try to manage the workflow a little bit better. So it's not that the lawyers are coming to you, with this great ask with very little notice. I mean, sometimes that is the case. I mean, that's just the way that the profession is. But there are some cases where a lawyer could have reached out and given you a little bit more time, but they didn't because they forgot about it. Or they're dealing with a laundry list of other priorities, and then all of a sudden they think, oh this deadline's coming up, now I gotta like assign all this work. So that's tough. So I think as a legal assistant, you should not be afraid to ask your lawyer that you're helping to kind of give updates and be like, hey, I noticed this, just to keep the lines of communication going. I think that's really important. And I think it's also important to make sure that one of the best things that was ever said to me from one of my former legal assistants is she said, don't bottle anything up, even if you think it's small. And I tell this to associates that I work with as well. Like, and I think this applies to all walks of life. Like, don't bottle anything up, because I think in the beginning, as an employee, you kind of feel scared to be upfront about something. I think your employer, whoever that may be, owes it to you to have constant lines of communication. So if there's something that's bothering you, you should not bottle it up on your end, but your employer should also be reminded not to bottle it up on their end, because it might be small in the beginning, but then it adds up. And then that's when there could be explosions and there could be real disagreements. And it could happen over days, months, years, whatever. I think it's important to have that constant line of communication, just be upfront and have that good relationship where you're like, hey, next time, here's some constructive feedback, how I think that, it could be done better. And obviously I leave it to you to word it in a proper and appropriate manner. But the idea is that, don't sit on something and just kind of hold it as a grudge. And then it kind of festers, it gets bigger and adds to another pile of grudges. Just even if it's small, just say it up front. And then that way, the process becomes better and it becomes more efficient. The working relationship becomes more open and more efficient.
Now, certainly right now, it's been quite a challenge. I mean, I couldn't imagine now working and then having an assistant virtually and a lot of emails and communications like that. But what's been in terms of working now? And I mean, I'm presuming you're working quite a bit at home compared to in the past. But how have you found that transition? And we've talked about Zoom. You were mentioning, having different kinds of networking with some of your clients done virtually as well. But what about just kind of the day-to-day stuff? How are you finding the impact of COVID-19? And do you find it easy to work, obviously, with a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old now at home and balancing everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different for everybody. For me, I've been lucky. I've gotten a lot of support from my wife in terms of helping me work with a toddler in the house. For me, it's been good actually. I think in terms of productivity for actual like work, it's probably been better. Not only do I save on having to like gel my hair and like change and like commuting is the big one, but I think the biggest thing is like I do find myself less distracted. You have less people coming in with all these various things, and so I'm able to focus in more. I think that the toughest thing has been mentorship and staying connected with, especially the junior associates and the students. I think that that's something that I feel bad about. We as a firm have tried to kind of supplement that with like more Zoom meetings. We have like lunches where, for example, um, the associates and students will be able to like order food through Uber or whatever venue you want, and it's on the firm. And we just have kind of like lunch and learns, and we have discussions and stuff like that. So just checking in more, making sure everybody feels accessible and or at least sources of mentorship are accessible to them. Being proactive and not waiting for people to ask you questions, but just checking in to make sure that that all of their questions have been answered. That's the toughest thing I think has been for the juniors in terms of that relationship and the camaraderie. I think one of the things that makes our firm special is that camaraderie, and that's certainly something that we want to continue when things get back to normal. But we've tried to kind of maintain it during this weird time in our lives. In terms of business development, I think that has also been another thing that has been hit hard by the pandemic. Um, I've been okay in that I've been able to kind of come up with some other approaches to business development. For example, like I run lunch and learns for some of our clients on a bi-weekly basis and whatnot. That's been something that we've kind of leaned on in terms of staying connected. Yeah, you just have to find different ways to stay connected with your client. It helps that we've just been pretty busy in general. But yeah, like the transition to work from home hasn't been as tough as I thought. And it's interesting. Like I'm interested to see what things will be like afterwards, when the pandemic kind of goes away, and to see if we fully ever transition back to the office. I think the emphasis on having all of these offices, which is a huge cost for these law firms and a lot of different types of employees as well in different industries. It'll be interesting to see if they start to move away from that, or I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to try to guess, but maybe it's a situation where it's a hoteling situation where you don't need as many offices as you thought you were, and maybe people come in maybe a few days a week instead of for 5 days a week. I don't know what that is, but it's definitely something to keep an eye out for.
Now, with that, one of the things certainly we've been discussing, and a couple of weeks ago there was Mental Health Week from the Law Society. But you mentioned obviously it's been more productive for you, but in terms of just kind of that isolation from just going into the firm, walking down the hall, talking to all the people that you mentioned, or just the grind. Obviously, I mean, maybe it's a little bit different, more worries about business development and things like that than perhaps a year and a half ago. But how do you take care of your own mental health, and certainly, I know a lot of times going to the parks and things like that, I would presume, or whatever you're allowed to, or whatever you're allowed to at this point. But what else that you found work for you to kind of, and certainly even you can go back to even when you were an associate, and certainly you had probably a lot longer hours of work. I remember we would have, when we would meet up a few times, and I'm not sure if you remember this, we would have dinner like at 9 o'clock, and then you'd be like, oh, I'm going home. And you'd be like, oh, I'm going back to the office. So what was that like in terms of getting through all that? And now you're a partner. So certainly it paid off in the end.
Yeah, I mean, from a mental health perspective, I think I'm lucky in that I live in a house where like I have a family, and so I'm not by myself. I think it would be especially tough for some of the younger individuals who are basically like in a condo, by themselves, and maybe it depends on the time, but like when there are restrictions where you're not even necessarily allowed to see other people. I think sometimes they say that you live by yourself, you're allowed to maybe go join some other bubble. But I mean, I think that can feel a little bit lonely. I mean, I've got a toddler, I've got my wife, and so like I'm not necessarily feeling like I'm alone. I have made taking extra steps to kind of stay connected with people through more constant Zoom meetings, where normally like even family that I have, maybe necessarily well, I know I would never do like a Zoom meeting before this, but like even now, like during like Thanksgiving or during Halloween, I had these Zoom meetings with people that like really even in normal times I only see once a year. Now we have like these large family type of Zoom meetings. So like there's been different ways. I think you have to make an effort to kind of stay connected with other people. But in terms of mental health, I mean, that's helped a lot, just being able to stay connected. I think the biggest concern, at least to me, from working from home is that it's harder to disconnect, because when you're always in front of the computer and you're not even like commuting, it's almost harder to kind of draw the line and be like, okay, like now's work time, now is downtime. And I think as lawyers, I mean, as you know, it is difficult. There is an expectation that you're going to be accessible within reason, but you do need to be accessible, even if it is a weekend, even if it is late at night. There are times when you're going to need to work, but generally speaking, I think it's just important for all industries, for all types of employees, to kind of set specific boundaries, again within reason, where when it's time to have dinner, when it's time to bathe your toddler, to take them to the park, that type of stuff, that you need to take that time, and you need to take that time for yourself. I mean, I will watch. I'm a big sports fan, as you know, so I've been watching a lot of the Leafs games. Sometimes I'll record them, so I'll watch them late at night. But like, yeah, like I'm gonna want to watch the Leafs game one that's coming up this week, and game two and that type of stuff. And so I'll take time to make sure I do that. In terms of physical activity, I think is important for me to keep a routine. So, I try to stay on top of exercising. I have a home gym in the basement. It's not very glamorous, but, it does the trick. If I want to do a jog now that the weather's getting better, I'll do that too. And so it's just, you have to just make time for yourself, make time for your family and friends. And I think that keeps you balanced.
And certainly, again, having a routine, even if it's, I think someone had shared, they wake up and they actually like get ready like they were going into work, even though, or to go into school, and even though they're just going to go back to their computer, but at least it kind of trains them that it's not just being at home and being in your sweats and just rolling out of bed, or even staying in bed and trying to work off off your bedroom there. Now, another thing we've also been talking about as well, and certainly you can share kind of from your experience being a partner, and in terms of diversity, right, in terms of our profession. And certainly there's been strides that have been made over from when we were in law school. Anything that you could comment on, and certainly in the profession there, and on how we can improve diversity so that the next generation of lawyers and paralegals and other professionals continue to be reflective of the community that or the Canada that we are in, where it's very diverse. And certainly we could see that hopefully hold true even more so in our legal profession.
Yeah, no, I think it's important, especially recently. It seems to be more of a groundswell in terms of an initiative to have more discussions about it and to recognize that, it can be perceived as an issue. And so like, I think that's an important first step, just to have that type of initial discussion about it and to recognize that is something to look out for. I mean, I can't speak for other firms. I know that at our firm, we have a diversity committee where we've tried to put together a committee that kind of focuses on these things and meets regularly to kind of discuss things with our executive committee, with our management, to talk about things, and they report back to the larger firm in general. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's not a solution. It's not a situation where you're going to find a solution overnight. I think for me personally, I don't know, maybe I've been overly optimistic and I have rose-colored glasses on. But for me, I feel like I've been lucky in that I haven't really noticed anything for myself in terms of any just being treated a certain way because of my background and whatnot. Not to say that that doesn't happen, but for me, I feel like I've been lucky in that people have always kind of focused on who I am as a person, which obviously is affected indirectly by your background and whatnot. But I mean, it's just the focus has just been on me as a person and the quality of my work. So I can't really speak for other people. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see that there's a discussion about it. I'm glad to see that there seems to be a focus across all firms that this is an important thing and this is something that people have to work on.
Now, I also recall that, especially because I'm obviously teaching paralegal students, and I know you're teaching a little bit still at in Windsor. Oh, I don't know if it's like a few classes here and there, but I do recall, because I was thinking of one of our other classmates there, that you were teaching at Seneca, I think a number of years back, presuming it was paralegal students there. But maybe you could share kind of a little bit of what that experience was like, as well as what you would tell your students and how they can succeed and get great marks in your classes. And I don't know what exactly the subjects you were covering, but certainly maybe you could touch on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was, yeah, so the Seneca thing, I haven't done that in years, but I did do it for a few years with a mutual friend of ours, Prue. That was really fun. And so like, yeah, that was a situation where I actually taught administrative law to aspiring paralegals, and people would ask me, what the hell do you know about administrative law? I didn't even take administrative law at Osgood. but in the spirit of, and I think by, based on this discussion, you kind of know the type of person I am, in the spirit of just trying new different things and trying to stay, give myself an opportunity to get out of the four corners of my office and not sit on a desk for 24/7. I asked my firm if I could go out and take this opportunity to kind of teach at Seneca and to in particular grapple a course that I was not familiar with at all. It was just an opportunity that kind of came up and I embraced it, and it was fun. Like honestly, I think I spent more in subway and cab rides going to and from these classes than I was actually compensated. But it was fun. Like, it was an experience, and I had a lot of fun with it. In terms of how to do well, I don't know. That's tough to say. I mean, for me personally, I introduced a moot element that was based on a baseball player, Yu Darvish, that was coming up and that I was interested in. So I created this fictional fact pattern for a moot, and I remember that was a lot of fun. I mean, for me, the reason why I did that wasn't just because I was lazy and I didn't want to grade as many papers, but I think for me, and maybe this is how I tie into answering your question, is I was trying to get at being able to evaluate students, not just on their ability to test well, Obviously, that's going to be the majority of the mark, like, like your final exam and whatnot. But the moot was an opportunity to kind of practice more soft skills and the ability to present, ability to think on your feet, to analyze, all skills that you have to deal with in the paralegal world and the legal world in general. So I guess my answer to your question is tr- try to work on different things, and to succeed you have to be a little bit more well-rounded, because I think that that prepares you better for your actual practice in law, or in working in a law firm. Is at the end of the day, you can test great, and that's important, and you have to know the X's and O's. But it's also important to have those soft skills and to be able to think on your feet and to analyze. And the interaction a lot of the times is more important than anything else. And that goes back to my advice on extracurriculars too, and why I did this course that had nothing to do with my practice of law, is because it just puts you in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation, but something that's a little bit fun, and for you to try different things. And I think that that makes you a better and more well-rounded person, in my case, a lawyer, but I think more importantly, a more well-rounded individual.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for taking the time here and speaking with my students and anyone listening. Um, Certainly, there are a lot of paralegal students here, as well as potential law students or young paralegals or young lawyers kind of just getting into the profession. So wondering if you have any final words of wisdom for them. I know you just shared quite a bit there, and we've talked quite a bit about the importance of being well-rounded, of being involved in school or even after school, like the Breakfast of Champions that you helped pioneer and raised over $1 million for the Sick Kids Hospital there. But what else can you share in terms of those who want to kind of make that leap, especially at a time right now where we're concerned about mental health, we're looking at diversity, and as well, COVID-19 has changed everything. Any final parting words? Thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Just to reiterate, I think following your passion. I know that sounds really cliche, and I'm certainly not that type of person that gives like fortune cookie / bumper sticker advice. But like honestly, I think if you do something that you're interested in, whether that be into captaining or being part of an intramural basketball league that is way more advanced than your skills. Just doing something that you like and that you're passionate about, I think that's going to bring out the best in you, because you're going to put in the most effort in that and you're going to get the most out of it. Like I say that all the time when people want to are applying to help out with Sick Kids, the initiative like Breakfast of Champions. We always say like you will get what you put into it. So, if you want to just come in and do minimal work, then certainly you can do that. But I don't think you're going to get that much from it. I don't think that you should go into anything saying, oh, this will be good for my resume. I think you should go into something because you're passionate about it and you're going to get a lot out of it and you're going to put a lot into it. And that applies to everything. That applies to law, that applies outside of law. I think follow your passion, be sincere about what you're interested in, and don't be afraid to want to work hard.
Perfect. So thanks once again for sharing all that information, all those valuable tips and advice. And certainly, if anyone wants to connect or reach out to you, I can certainly pass along probably your LinkedIn information there being the best. It certainly is always great. A lot of the times here, certainly the last couple of people today and Friday were people that I went through the trenches with in law school. So it's always great to kind of reconnect and have things like this. I know we recently had a Zoom thing as well with a few of our other friends. So it was nice always reminiscing about those times. But again, I think and you were joking, like I don't know if I should be talking about all this stuff, but it's funny because it is really important. And I think for any of my students listening, it's a lot more challenging now being online, but make those connections. We used to have class literally, I mean, I didn't go every day, but theoretically we could have been in the same room, the same building every day for an entire year. And then in your second and third year, you may have a couple classes, but you'd run into each other in the cafeteria and things like that. And the impact that has is going to carry on. I mean, there are going to be people in the profession that you're going to grow up with and go through a lot of challenges. And certainly it's certainly important to know the law and understand and study it, but it's also important to make those connections, and a connection that I have here. And certainly thanks so much again. Sure, if I didn't know you from law school, I'd probably be pushing you. It'd be a little harder to get you to come and talk. And certainly, I guess, keep true to yourself there. And thanks again for joining, and take care, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great day. And thank